"The HOA hired you to kill me if I don't move out?" I asked the man standing in my doorway, his hand resting on a concealed weapon. "Yes, sir," he replied coldly. "Victoria Blackwell paid me $50,000 to make sure you're gone by morning. One way or another." He stepped inside uninvited, scanning my living room. "Nothing personal, just business." What Victoria and her Oak Ridge Estates HOA cronies didn't know was that I'm James Reynolds, former chief of police, who personally built our city's entire department from the ground up. Every officer, detective, and SWAT member in a 50-mile radius had trained under me. Their hitman had just walked into the worst possible target's home. I smiled calmly. "Before you make your next move, you should know SWAT Commander Richards has 3 snipers on you right now." I held up my phone. One text from me brought the entire department. They're quite protective of their former boss. The hitman froze, realization washing over his face. "Wait, you're Chief Reynolds, the one who—" He slowly raised his hands. "Nobody told me who I was targeting. This changes everything. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe for more HOA nightmare stories." It all started 3 months ago. After 30 years in law enforcement, my retirement plan was simple. A quiet home in Oak Ridge Estates, with a garden for my wife Margaret, and enough space for grandkids to visit. Then Victoria Blackwell became HOA president. My troubles began when I installed security cameras, standard practice for an ex-cop. "Those cameras violate our aesthetic guidelines," Victoria announced at my door, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes, clipboard clutched to her chest. I explained they were discreet, city-approved, and frankly non-negotiable for someone who'd put away hundreds of criminals. "The HOA bylaws supersede your personal paranoia," she said with a dismissive wave. The next day, a violation notice appeared, $500 fine. When I didn't pay, another arrived, $1,000, then another. I filed proper appeals, attended hearings, presented home security statutes. Victoria rejected everything. "Rules are rules, Mr. Reynolds." I noticed similar harassment targeting others. Mrs. Chen, a widowed nurse working night shifts, retired Sergeant Wilson who'd served under me, the Rodriguez family with their special needs child. All received excessive fines for minor or fabricated infractions. My investigative instincts kicked in. Public records revealed Victoria's other job, Executive Vice President at Blackwell Development Group. Their pending project? Oak Ridge Heights luxury condominiums, planned for exactly where our home stood. The pattern became clear. Target vulnerable residents with overwhelming fines, force them to sell below market value. Classic predatory development. When my grandson's wheelchair ramp resulted in a twing $500 fine for unauthorized structural modification, I'd had enough. I contacted Judge Martinez, my old poker buddy. "This sounds like elderly exploitation and fraud," he said gravely. "Document everything." I installed additional hidden cameras, capturing Victoria and her associates trespassing, tampering with my property, creating violations they'd later fine me for. The evidence was damning, but I needed more. Then Mrs. Chen disappeared. Her house sold overnight to Blackwell Development for 40% below value. Sergeant Wilson found his service dog accidentally poisoned with a note. "Time to move, old man." I approached Detective Sanchez, who I'd personally mentored. "I need this handled quietly," I explained, sharing my evidence. "We've suspected real estate fraud in several communities," she confirmed. "But victims always back down. We need someone willing to go all the way." That night, Victoria's brother Marco, HOA treasurer and known associate of local criminals, entered my backyard at 2 a.m. My cameras caught him cutting gas lines, creating a deadly leak. This wasn't just harassment anymore. It was attempted murder. I sent the footage to Detective Sanchez, who obtained search warrants for the Blackwell offices. They discovered detailed plans targeting specific homeowners with my name at the top. of their priority removal list, along with a payment record to someone called the contractor, a known alias for Michael Reese, Hitman for hire. Victoria must have realized the walls were closing in. That's when she made her most desperate move, hiring Reese to force me out permanently. The man now standing in my living room, looking increasingly uncomfortable. I was told this was a simple intimidation job, Reese muttered, glancing toward the windows. Nobody mentioned anything about cops. Victoria lied to you, I said calmly. Just like she's been lying to everyone. Reese's phone buzzed. He checked it, his face hardening. She's texting to confirm it's done. Says if I don't report success in 5 minutes, my payment gets cancelled. You have 2 options, I said. Walk out that door into SWAT custody or help me take down someone who tried to make you an accomplice to murdering a former police chief. Reese looked at me for a long moment. What exactly did you have in mind? After Reese agreed to help, we staged photos making it look like he'd succeeded. Victoria's response was immediate, a congratulatory text and transfer confirmation. Digital evidence of criminal conspiracy right there. What we didn't anticipate was Victoria's next move. While SWAT maintained surveillance on my home, emergency alerts flooded my phone. My daughter Amanda's house was on fire. My grandson was inside. This wasn't part of any deal, Reese said, genuine shock in his voice. She's eliminating loose ends, including me. I called Amanda. No answer. Called my son-in-law. Nothing. Pure terror gripped me as we raced across town, police escort clearing traffic. Victoria had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. We arrived to find firefighters battling the blaze. My heart stopped until I saw Amanda and my grandson safely in an ambulance. Someone cut the gas line, the fire chief reported, just like they tried at your place. As relief flooded through me, Detective Sanchez approached, her expression grim. Sir, we have another problem. Judge Martinez was just found unconscious in his home. Apparent break-in. He's in critical condition. This was coordinated warfare against everyone helping me. Victoria wasn't just trying to acquire property anymore. She was eliminating witnesses, silencing justice, attacking my family. Chief, Detective Sanchez said quietly, using my old title. This has escalated beyond fraud. We need to move now before anyone else gets hurt. I nodded, fighting to stay calm despite the rage building inside me. Victoria doesn't know who she's dealing with. That ends tonight. Reese, who had remained silent, finally spoke. Her brother Marco handles security for their office. I know their protocols, access points, everything. They're meeting tonight to finalize the development deal with investors. I looked at the man who'd been sent to threaten me, now offering information that could save lives. Why help us now? I'm a lot of things, he replied. But I don't target children. And I don't appreciate being set up as a fall guy. Detective Sanchez made the call. All units. Operation Homestead is a go. The Blackwell development headquarters gleamed in the night, all glass and modern angles. Inside, Victoria and her investors were celebrating their impending takeover of our neighborhood. They had no idea what was coming. Detective Sanchez coordinated from the command vehicle while I reviewed building schematics with the tactical team. I trained most of you, I reminded them. Tonight, we protect our own. With Reese providing security codes, we moved silently through the building. Tactical teams secured each floor while cybercrime specialists accessed their servers. Everything was going smoothly until Marco Blackwell spotted one of our plainclothes officers. He immediately triggered the alarm and grabbed his phone. There, calling for cleanup, Reese warned. Professional fixers who eliminate evidence and witnesses. We had to move fast. I joined the team, converging on the executive conference room, just as Victoria was assuring her nervous investors. Completely legal acquisition strategy. The old police chief is simply bitter about progress. The doors burst open. Victoria's expression as she saw me walk in alongside a full tactical team was priceless. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced to the stunned room, "I'm retired Police Chief James Reynolds. This meeting is now concluded." Victoria recovered quickly, her smile venomous. "This is a private business meeting you're interrupting. I'm sure your former colleagues are embarrassed by this senile display." Captain Rivera stepped forward. "Victoria Blackwell, we have warrants for your arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, arson, fraud, elder abuse, and attempted murder of a judicial officer." "Ridiculous," she scoffed. "My attorneys will have this thrown out before morning. You have nothing." I nodded to Detective Sanchez, who connected her laptop to the room's projector. "Actually, we have everything." The screen filled with Victoria's text messages to Reese, authorizing my elimination. Then footage of Marco, cutting gas lines. Financial records showing property purchases far below market value after orchestrated harassment. The shell companies. The bribes to building inspectors. The targeted list of homeowners marked for removal, with detailed strategies for each. "We also have this," I said, as the screen showed hospital footage of my grandson being treated for smoke inhalation. "You didn't just attack homeowners, you attacked families, children." The investors began gathering their things, murmuring about liability and dissociation. Victoria's composure finally cracked. "You think this changes anything? Do you know who I am? Who my family knows? This is bigger than your pathetic little retirement community." Her brother Marco made a desperate move, reaching inside his jacket. Before anyone could react, Reese stepped forward and twisted Marco's arm behind his back. "Not smart," he muttered, removing a gun from Marco's holster. Victoria stared at Reese in disbelief. "You're working with them? I paid you." "You tried to set me up for murdering a cop and attacking a kid," Reese replied coldly. "Bad business. Practice." As officers led Victoria away in handcuffs, she fixed her gaze on me. "This isn't over, Reynolds. People like you are always in the way of progress. We're building the future." "No," I replied calmly. "You're going to prison, and we're keeping our homes." Outside, news crews had already gathered. Captain Rivera handled the press while I checked in with Detective Sanchez. "We've seized their servers," she confirmed. "Cybercrime is already finding similar operations in 5 other neighborhoods. This is huge." My phone rang. The hospital. Judge Martinez was awake and stable. Another call. The fire marshal confirmed my daughter's family could return home. Once repairs were complete, relief washed over me. As dawn broke, I stood watching officers lead the last of Victoria's associates to police vehicles. Captain Rivera approached, offering me coffee in a paper cup. "Just like old times, Chief," she said with a tired smile. "You know, when you retired, you told me the department was in good hands. Tonight proved you were right." I nodded, emotion tightening my throat. "I built this department to protect people, to serve justice. Tonight, you all did exactly that." "We had a good teacher," she replied. "We watched Victoria's investors being interviewed by financial crimes detectives." "How many homeowners were targeted?" I asked. "Across all neighborhoods, over 200. Mostly elderly, single parents, first responders, people they thought wouldn't or couldn't fight back. They picked the wrong neighborhood this time." "They picked the wrong man," Rivera corrected. As morning fully arrived, I returned to Oak Ridge Estates. Neighbors had gathered on porches and sidewalks, word having spread about the night's events. Mrs. Chen was there. She hadn't left willingly after all, but had been temporarily relocated by protective services after reporting threats. Sergeant Wilson stood with his service dog, nodding respectfully as I passed. For the first time in months, there were no violation notices on doors, no threatening letters, no HOA spies photographing. Minor infractions, just neighbors standing together in the community they'd refused to abandon. The Rodriguez family approached me, their young son in his wheelchair. "We heard what happened," Mr. Rodriguez said, extending his hand. "Thank you for fighting for all of us." I shook his hand firmly. "That's what community means. We look out for each other." As I finally reached my front door, exhausted but satisfied, my phone buzzed with a text from Detective Sanchez. "Victoria's bail denied. Judge cited flight risk and danger to community. This one's going away for a long time. Justice served. Homes saved, community protected. Not bad for a retiree's work." 6 months later, Oak Ridge Estates has transformed. The community elected a new HOA board focused on actual community service rather than property control. Mrs. Chen serves as president, with Sergeant Wilson handling security concerns. The Rodriguez family established a neighborhood accessibility committee ensuring everyone feels welcome. Victoria and Marco Blackwell's trial made national headlines. HOA criminals target police chief faced justice. Their conviction brought a 25-year sentence for Victoria, 18 for Marco. Blackwell Development Group's assets were seized, with proceeds creating a fund for victimized homeowners across all targeted neighborhoods. Reese received reduced charges in exchange for his cooperation exposing similar operations nationwide. His testimony before a Senate Committee on Predatory Real Estate Practices led to new federal protections for homeowners. Judge Martinez recovered fully and presided over the civil case, awarding substantial damages to every affected resident. My grandson's college fund is now secure, along with Mrs. Chen's retirement. Yesterday, as I tended my garden, Detective Sanchez, now Captain Sanchez, stopped by. "Just checking in on the neighborhood hero," she said with a smile. I shook my head. "Not a hero, just someone who remembered what community really means." "Well, your community sends their thanks," she replied, handing me a department commendation. "Sometimes standing your ground isn't just about protecting your property. It's about protecting everyone who calls that ground home."